Hey guys, and welcome to my first cake video. Today I am making a rosette graduation cake. Um, and be patient with me because, like I said, this is my first video. I just started learning how to record, how to position cameras, all that. Right now in the video, I am starting to make the diploma that will go on top of the cake. Um, you will see that my techniques are a little bit different from probably a lot of people that you watch. I was self-taught, so I learned how to do a lot of this by myself. Um, and the metal scraper is my best friend. It has a ruler built into it, so I use it to get straight edges and to measure. And also paper towels. That's how I make my cylinders anytime that I need something to be cylindrical. And I don't use edible glue. I use water to make my fondant stick. Um, it's just an expense that's not needed. I started off with water and it works, so I just continued to use that. So I set my diploma to the side and I'm letting it dry out overnight so it will keep that shape. Um, and if you add cornstarch to your fondant, it will help it to dry out and become hardened. And I'm starting to make the cap that will go on top of the cake. Um, and most bakers know that making black fondant is the least favorite. The colors I like to use actually like the Hobby Lobby brand. I think it's Sunny Made. Um, I just love their colors. They work really well for me. And then Americolor, a friend told me about Americolor. I tried that and those work as well. So you could use either one of those. And I just took a cake board and actually cut it into a square. And that's what I'm going to use for the top of the graduation cap. Um, you will see I spend a lot of time rolling out my fondant. And it sticks a lot because I do not like to use cornstarch, especially on darker colors. It's very visible when you use a lot of cornstarch, and I would rather take the extra time and continue just messing with my fondant than to add a lot of cornstarch. Um, you want to cut the square a little bit larger than your cardboard, so you can roll the fondant underneath, so the cardboard won't be showing. And I just attach it with water. Um, and you can see how I'm folding it under on the edges just to make sure that nothing is seen. And then you will set that aside as well. And those typically don't take too long to dry because they are so thin. I'm going to start stacking my cake. Um, the pink disc that I just placed on top of my cake turner is a must. It is a non-stick, a non-slip mat, and it will keep the cake board from sliding around. And you will also see that I don't use a lot of icing in between my layers. A lot of people do add extra icing just so their cakes stand taller. But I like to have a good cake to icing ratio. I don't want my cakes to just look good. I want them to taste good as well and not be overly sweet. So I tend to cut my layers taller so that I don't have to overcompensate with icing. Um, and now I'm just adding my crumb coat. I like to do 2 crumb coats. A lot of people use one, and you can. I've just found that doing 2 crumb coats allows for a sharper edge on the cake. So I always just add the second crumb coat. And while I was actually doing this cake, I forgot how much icing you need for a rosette cake. I haven't been baking recently because of school. I took some time off, but now that I did a rosette cake again, usually I can take one batch of my icing and I can do an 8-inch cake and a 6-inch cake. But after like the first row of roses that I put on this cake, I ran out of icing. So it took like 1.5 batches of icing to do this cake. Um, and also that I'm making the bottom of the graduation cap. And that was actually cake and icing that I pretty much made into a cake pop. A lot of people use Rice Krispies. They work well because they are light and airy. They don't put a lot of weight on the cake. But I was able to mold that the way that I needed it to be. And I'm actually going to start doing that more when I need small articles put on top of a cake. I'm going to use cake and icing because it worked great. And I didn't have to cover it with icing. I just had to put fondant on it. And then I needed to add the pearls, and I asked my husband, I showed him two, and I was like, which one should I use, the smaller or bigger ones? And he's like, the smaller ones, and I tried them, and yeah, the bigger ones worked. So I ended up putting the bigger pearls in, and yes, I still do them by hand. A lot of people have the little pearl dispenser, but I didn't like it. I bought one. I just didn't like the way it worked, so I still just add them by hand. And now I'm just putting the tassel onto the diploma. Putting the final touches. And you can see that the diploma is still holding its shape. I added a good bit of cornstarch, so it's right overnight. This little tool right here is one of my favorites. One of my good friends, Kristen, who is an angel, bought one for me. She's like, you got to try this thing. And there are like so many different things you can do with it. I use it for the strings on the tassel. It creates all of them at the same time. And I actually made a shoe cake this past weekend, and I used it for the shoestrings that I did on the cake. It saves so much time, and everything is symmetrical. So you'll see the final picture looks different. The customer actually wanted to add roses to the end of the cake or on top of the cake instead. And that's the final product. And thank you guys so much.